Welcome back to the Weston Way. I'm Pam.
I'm Austin.
And today we're honored to have in our studio Weston's very own city manager, Don Decker. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm so excited to see the podcast off and running. You guys are doing a great job so far.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your support. It's because of the leadership support that we have here that we're able to do innovative projects and try new things to reach the Weston community, and we hope our listeners appreciate that. Before we get into the podcast, we want to kind of give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. Tell us about your career background and your journey to Weston.
Well, happy to do so. I thought my career trajectory was going to be a lot different, as most people do when they're young. I had worked at several amusement parks when I was young and thought I would go into the amusement park business. Maybe I'd run Walt Disney World one day. So I got a degree in leisure studies, but I focused on theme park studies. I worked at several, including Walt Disney World. So I'd had a little bit of a connection to Florida, but realized that the commercial recreation just didn't have as much to give back to me as I had hoped it would. And there was sort of a side opportunity in local parks and recreation, working for either counties or states or municipal governments. So fortunately, my college professor asked me to intern somewhere other than a theme park to give me a more broad experience.
Yeah.
And that's what put me into an internship in the city of Plantation down here in Florida and ultimately sent me on that career. Found that Florida had more opportunity for parks and recreation, so ended up down here full time. And fortunately, when we moved down here was in 1998, and the City of Weston was just getting off the ground. I worked a few years at a neighboring city, realized traditional government wasn't going to be for me for a lot of different reasons, but somebody told me, you should check out Weston. It's a little bit different, and it was owned by Disney at one time, and I started looking into that, and I thought, well, this is an interesting combination of my experience.
Right.
I wonder if I could take what I did at Disney and apply that at Weston, which was kind of built on a Disney model.
Right.
And fortunately got hired about the time that Western Regional Park opened and was the Parks and Recreation Director for many years before I pivoted to the city manager role almost 6 years ago now.
It's an interesting parallel in managing a theme park and the concept of learning those tools and applying it to city government. And like you said, you know, with Weston being kind of connected to the developers that were connected to Disney, it kind of is a full circle for you to now manage Weston.
Well, both physically and from a value perspective, right? Physically, we look a lot like Disney World. If you drive around Walt Disney World and you drive around Weston, it's very similar look. We don't have the theme parks or the rides or the hotels, but very similar streets and landscaping and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, customer service is so important to Walt Disney World and to the Disney company, and it's so important here in Weston. So those are just very natural connections between the two backgrounds that I have.
Right.
Right. You had said earlier that you had realized in your experience at some other cities that traditional government wasn't going to be for you. So I'm wondering, like, in what ways is Weston unique that maybe residents aren't aware of? I'm talking in terms of like the form of the government. I think people are well familiar with how federal government might work, per se, but I think they're less familiar with even the role and the operations of their city government. So how is Weston unique?
Right. And I don't want to talk ill of traditional forms of government because there's a lot of great city governments out there. At the same time, Weston operated more like a business. In fact, I think the tagline when I started in Weston for the city was the nation's premier municipal corporation.
Right.
We were operating more like a corporation than when we were a government. We were operating more efficiently. At that time, we only had 3 employees. Now we have 12, so we've really expanded. And the contract form of government, which I'm sure we'll get into, was just very appealing to me. I liked the idea of trying to provide the traditional services that the cities can provide, but in a more efficient, more cost-effective way. At the time, it was just sort of an idea, and we hoped it was going to work. But now, after 28, 29 years, it's obviously proven itself.
Absolutely. And there's benefits to contracting services, and there's also a few challenges. Let's expand on that. What would you say are some of the benefits that maybe residents don't realize how much we contract out and why?
Well, for sure, some of the benefits are not obvious to the residents, but they're pretty obvious to us. One is competition. We know that competition breeds excellence to some degree. And when we have competing companies out there providing similar services, let's just say one of them says, we just can't meet your standards. And we can point to saying, well, the company that's taking care of that side of the city is meeting our standards. That competition sort of drives people to try to do better, for sure. The other advantages are we can be more nimble as a city, right? If we need to have a service that we don't provide today, we could stand it up pretty quickly. And if that service is no longer something we need 3 years from now, we could stand it down. We don't have to terminate people in order to make that happen. We could just tell the company, I'm sorry, we no longer need your services. They could go find another location to provide the services, but we didn't have to lay people off in order to make that happen. And that's proven itself to be real valuable to us several times in our history, particularly when the recession hit. Something like the building department, for instance, the building permits went way, way down during we didn't have to lay people off, and most of our neighboring cities did.
Absolutely, yes.
Our building department had to find opportunities for their staff elsewhere, and usually did in other cities. There was just a real opportunity to be more efficient, more nimble, and that continues to be the case for us.
With that being said, with all of the various contract providers that are providing services daily in Weston, how do you instill a sense of one team Weston internally?
Well, in our vernacular, for one, we have city employees and we have designated staff. I think that designated staff, from their perspective, they're still staff for the City of Weston. They're still providing services to Weston. We include them in our staff meetings. All of the department heads are at the table, whether they're a City of Weston employee or not. Everybody's around the table. When we have our annual celebrations of our staff, we bring everybody in from all the contract companies and we recognize them all. We're not just recognizing the 12 city employees. Trainings are provided to all. We celebrate their wins. When we get compliments for the contractors, we celebrate them emails from the city manager like we would any of our staff members. So I think from the staff perspective, they're part of Team Weston, whether their paycheck says Calvin Giordano Associates or BSO. I think everybody, and I hope it's the case anyways, I believe it to be true, that people feel like they're part of Team Weston because we make them feel that way.
I think Austin and I can speak from experience coming from a contract provider. It's really all the back end, the HR stuff that the city doesn't have to deal with, actually, and the human resources items can take up time, especially in a city manager role. So just not having to work through that on a daily basis.
You still see us at the city events. We're still wearing our Weston polo shirts and representing the city, not necessarily our contract provider.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think the residents don't particularly care what names are on your paychecks either, as long as they're getting the services that they expect.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I remember hearing a story from the prior city manager that they were once asked by another city manager in Broward, how's your little science experiment going there in the city of Weston? And now, almost 30 years later, how would you answer that question now?
Well, I think the success is in the evidence of us doing so well, winning so many awards over the years that, by the way, we don't apply for. We often are awarded designations from various magazines and other organizations just simply because people have recognized the outstanding nature of what Weston provides and not because we went looking for it. But I think the evidence also is in the number of cities that since we've incorporated who have tried to model themselves to some degree after Weston. Not everybody can do it entirely. I mean, there's not too many cities out there that have less than a dozen employees. Right. But there are people who are taking what we do and sort of customizing to their own needs. Maybe they're contracting out just their parks maintenance, or they're contracting out just their police and fire, or they're contracting out just their technology services. They might not be contracting out everything like we do, but I think the efficiencies, even these many years later, have proven to continue to hold value. And particularly newer cities that are incorporating right now are looking at this as a real viable way to proceed.
I think it's easier when you're first incorporating as a city to instill that contract form of government versus having to go back and then lay off a whole division to contract out that service. Because in my prior role, I went through that, and that's a tough position for city management and leaders, elected leaders, to be in.
No question. Then it becomes a political issue, right? If you've got 1,000 employees and you say, you know what, we think we're going to take the Weston model. Now we're going to contract everything out. Well, now you've got 1,000 employees who are thinking about whether or not they're going to have jobs. Of those 1,000 employees, half of them might live in the community, and now they're talking to their elected officials about whether or not their neighbors, if they're going to have jobs, and it becomes a political issue and not an organizational
management
efficiency issue.
Right. Absolutely.
That's a great overview, I think, broadly of how the city works in our unique contract form of government. I'm curious now, though, from your perspective, you are the city manager. You're only the city's second city manager in our existence. So I'm wondering if you can explain a bit your responsibilities as city manager.
Well, we have a commission manager form of government. So the commission sets the policy. They set our laws through our city code. And the city manager is responsible for making it happen, right? The day-to-day operations of the city. I'm responsible for hiring the city staff, so the 11 other employees. I also am responsible for selecting the police chief, the fire chief, setting the budget, which the commission ultimately has to approve, and understanding their wants and their needs as part of that process. One of the biggest responsibilities is one that wasn't talked about too much during the interview process, which is communication. Communicating with the elected officials, communicating with the community, especially in this day and age, is so critical. So I spend a lot more time on the phone, answering questions on Facebook, responding to elected officials 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I want to make sure that the community has all the correct information to both understand what we're doing from a day-to-day business, and also to sort of set aside the rumors and the speculation and all that, because that's the stuff that can really sort of haunt a city if you don't tamp that down. We've been very good about that, I think, over the years.
I think providing the context of decisions and, why decisions are made a certain way kind of helps.
Transparency.
Well,
absolutely.
that's big for us. Transparency is very, very big for us. And it's about one of our core values, in addition to value, is integrity, right? And the way we communicate and what we communicate will either undermine that integrity or it will fortify it. And it's one of our challenges to make sure that we maintain that integrity so that people know that we can be a trusted value resource. And no more important maybe than as we're on the verge of another hurricane season now. And one of the major roles we play, particularly city manager, but all our staff, is in emergency management, right? And if we are not considered to be an integral form of communication to the community, when we get to an emergency event and we're putting out information, do people trust that or not? Hopefully we've gained that trust, we've maintained it, and they will. But that is an important role we play in the emergency management process.
And in Weston, we have a 5-member commission. How do you juggle the needs and wants of 5 bosses?
Well, my wife might tell you I have 6 bosses, but 5 bosses. Well, first of all, I don't think them as bosses. I think them as partners in this endeavor, right? We're all trying to do the right thing. We're all trying to provide value to the community, to make it a successful community, to be a community of integrity. And there might be different opinions on how we get there, but we all have the same destination in mind, right? The elected officials all have equal authority, if you will. I mean, we have a mayor and a vice mayor and 3 other commissioners, but from a voting perspective, they all have equal import. So, when one of them has a concern, as far as I'm concerned, it's a concern I need to either tackle or see if the other 4 are feeling the same way about it. I communicate with them all equally. I don't tell one of them something I don't tell the 5 of them, because I don't want anybody to feel like they're being left out or they're not made aware of information. That can be a problem for city managers if they're not treating all 5 elected officials equal. And I stay out of the politics, and not that there should be partisan politics in local government. It's designed not to be, but we know it's there and it's understandable. But I just keep myself completely removed from that. I try to stay out of all that, because it doesn't matter to me whether the 5 of them are R's, D's, I's, or something else. It makes no difference to the operation of the city. So
very good.
Wonderful. And at that, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about what makes the City of Weston unique. Celebrate the USA's 249th birthday at Weston's hometown fireworks celebration. Join us on Thursday, July 3rd from 6 to 9 p.m. for an unforgettable evening of fun and entertainment at Weston Regional Park. Enjoy interactive games, craft tents, and a high-energy rock performance by Blonde Ambition. Concessions will be available, so bring your appetite, or pack a picnic and enjoy a home-cooked meal. Admission is free for the whole family, and be sure to arrive early to give yourself time to explore all of the activities before the fireworks show. Happy 4th, Weston.
Hey Weston, ready to kick off your Independence Day with a bang? Join us for the 4th of July 5K race, sponsored by the City of Weston, YMCA of South Florida, and the Weston YMCA Family Center. On Friday, July 4th, lace up your sneakers and meet us at 7:15 near the Bell Tower at Main Street in Weston Town Center. Dress in your most patriotic gear and race off with your friends and family. You can run or walk, it's up to you. Finishers get a shiny medal, a cool race t-shirt, and the chance to cool off at the hook and ladder shower at the finish line. Register now for the best deal. Let's make this 4th of July unforgettable.
And we're back on the Weston Way. Today we have City Manager Don Decker with us. And before the break, we were talking about operations, city operations, and city manager role. Let's roll into what makes Weston special and dive a little deeper into the organizational core values that we have here in Weston that impact service and operations.
Yeah, I think we talked about them a little bit. We'll get into a little bit more detail. And I think one of the more important things we were talking about before the break was integrity. And I'm reminded of something I used to be told by my parents all the time, which was the time is always right to do what is right. And when we are discussing anything at the staff table or when I'm having conversations with staff about challenges, I always think back to that motto and say, okay, what would my grandmother say would be the right thing to do here? And we've applied that many times over the years, whether it was through COVID and just trying to make sure we followed proper advice that was coming down from us for the various officials, not getting ahead of it, not getting behind it, just kind of following it along. We tried to maintain integrity during that process and make sure the residents knew that what they were hearing from us was true and valuable and helpful. That's certainly a key to us. We talk about our successes. We talk about the fact that we want to champion them, and then not just our own successes, right? I mean, we like to champion the success of our school system as much as we can.
Right.
We just had, our 3 rabbis in our city commission chambers last night talking about anti-Semitism and making sure we were part of that community. Mm-hmm. We like to recognize our young people in the community who win awards, and they come to our commission
and there
meetings.
Are many.
Many. There are many. So, as far as I'm concerned, if anybody in the community is doing well, it lifts up the whole community. If somebody in the community is not doing well, it drags down the community. So we need to be there for each other in our wins, in our losses. And I have found over the years that Weston is pretty darn good at that.
Can you talk a bit more about the role that the city has in the community, particularly maybe what our actual role is and maybe what might be some misconceptions or misplaced expectations of what the city's role is? I'm thinking specifically, we get often calls about issues with the schools, which this might not be, under the city's purview. Can you talk a bit about what role we play in the broader City of Weston, not the City of Weston, the organization? Right.
It is a challenge for us because people assume that we can fix everything.
Right.
And the reality is we can't fix a whole lot. I liken it a little bit to the human body, right? The City of Weston is like the skeleton. We're the thing that brings it together.
And that's the organization or the broader city?
The organization and the city, right? We provide the roadways, which is the arteries. We provide, police and fire. We provide protection. There are things we can provide. We can't provide community. We can provide events, but unless people show up and unless we have volunteers, there's no community, right?
Right.
It's the organizations, it's the churches, it's the volunteer organizations, it's the civic organizations. I think about the Rotary Club and the Arts Council and the Sports Alliance and the Cypress Bay PTA. Those organizations are what make the community work. And oftentimes they are the first line of defense when there are challenges in the community, right? If there's need out there, typically it's not local government that can fix the need. It's other organizations that can help the need. We can maybe be the conduit of information. We can contact one of the local priests and say, hey, there's a need. Can you help us out here? but ultimately it's the community that fixes it and can meet that challenge.
Right. It's people coming together.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, whether it's John Flint, the first city manager here, or Don Decker, the second city manager, or the next one, the people that play those roles, I don't want to say we're irrelevant, but we're not as relevant as these other entities in the city who are the lifeblood of the community. Going back to the organizations, yes, we don't control the schools, we don't control the library, we don't control the freeway system, and some of those things are oftentimes the causes of most of the consternation here. I wish we could fix some of the things that go wrong at those places, but we can't. I mean, governments are separate for a reason, and there's certain powers we have, and unfortunately, there's certain powers we don't have.
And like you touched on, you can serve as a conduit and as a representative for the city, and reaching out to a state agency or a local, the school board, but ultimately those decisions are theirs.
Right.
But I will tell you that the best advocates are the residents. I can call the school board and say I have a problem, and they're going to feed me a line about we'll get to it. But when the residents start calling the school board in numbers, that's what really makes a difference.
Right.
Unfortunately.
The critical mass
Exactly.
of people.
Exactly.
Let's talk about emergency operations. Well, kind of first off, you became city manager in the fall of 2019, and then we roll into a COVID pandemic, a worldwide global pandemic. So that was a bit of a crisis in terms of, how local government provided services, continued operations during COVID. And then we have, of course, in South Florida, hurricanes and other issues. How does the city respond to emergency operations, and what does your role pertain to in that?
Well, yes, COVID was an unexpected surprise in my first 6 months being the city manager. In fact, I called the prior city manager and I said, we have thousands of pages on hurricane preparation. We have a paragraph on pandemics. What am I supposed to do? And he said, good luck. That was the end of it. But no, we do train very hard for emergencies, and obviously hurricane season is the one we're most focused on. But much of that training was helpful to us in COVID as well. Some of the processes we had in place, the way we communicate between the county, the state, the cities was already in place. So that practice, while not specific to COVID, is good practice for any emergency, right? The good news is after the tragedy of 9/11, the city pivoted to a national incident management system, basically in a way to get all of the entities out there who ever deal with emergencies to be speaking from one playbook,
Right,
with the same acronyms and the same organizational structures. So we operate just like the federal government does in emergency under the NIM structure, where the city manager becomes the incident commander. All of our city staff move into these various pivotal roles that would bore the community to have to listen to. But we start operating in the same manner that Oakland Park and Fort Lauderdale and Miami and San Antonio will operate. We under the same model, so that if we have needs, we can reach out to the neighboring communities and they can help us and so forth. But we try to make sure that we can provide as much service as we can internally before we'd have to go to those outside entities. So we do a lot of preparation prior to storms, like making sure all of our generators are ready to go, all of our pumps are ready to go. Basically, it's a 12-month a year endeavor to make sure we're ready for the most obvious tragedy that's going to hit us, which is some kind of a hurricane. And we have a staff that is training throughout the year for that. In fact, we're getting ready in a couple of days here to do our annual tabletop exercise training, which will be all hands on for that. So the community should be confident to know that the staff is prepared, but also they need to prepare themselves, right? We say it all the time. The community needs to be prepared for not having assistance for 3 days after a storm.
right.
I want the community to think about that. 3 days is a long time to not have assistance. You need to have water for 3 days, food for 3 days, batteries for 3 days,
right,
for each person in the house. And I think sometimes that gets lost and everybody just assumes we're going to show up on the doorstep, after the iPass is over. And that's not what's going to happen.
Absolutely
The
not,
community
yeah.
needs to be ready for that and be prepared themselves. We're going to come help, but they need to be prepared to help themselves.
And if this is your first hurricane season coming up, if it's something that you haven't thought about since last hurricane season, the city does compile a lot of resources for you. They're all available online. It's westonfl.org/hurricane. It's the best place to get started to get your emergency preparations ready for the season.
Yeah, our new residents need to go there right now. I mean, we're on the verge of hurricane season. You do not want to be standing at Home Depot 24 hours before the storm is going to hit. Go get all those supplies today, put them in a closet, and be prepared now.
Absolutely. Let's take a future look at how residents can shape the future of the city. What would be your recommendation for our residents in Weston to make a difference in the future of Weston?
Many ways that they can. First of all, I'm often asked by other organizations, what can we do to help the community and to help the city? The city government, we don't have a whole lot of needs, and that does not meant to sound arrogant, but we don't have parks that need to be cleaned up. If they're not clean, somebody's not doing their job right. We don't have buildings that need to be painted, but the schools need help. Other organizations need help. Where the community can really come in to help and be part of our future is by getting involved in those other organizations. And whether it's being a member of the CERT team, joining our Weston Gov Academy, being a volunteer coach, joining the Rotary, those organizations, as I said earlier, are the organizations that really make a difference out here. If they want to get involved in the vision of the future of the City of Weston government or the physical plant of the City of Weston, then kind of get engaged in some of the things we have coming up, like our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is going to be guiding us over the next 10 years. We have coming up here pretty shortly, we're going to have an open house for the new Vista Park Recreation Center.
Right.
Come tell us what you think about it.
Yeah.
Come to commission meetings. I joke about it all the time, but it has become reality. In 30 years of budgets, we've probably had members of the community come to 3 of our 30 meetings to have questions about the budget.
Right.
Maybe that means everybody's very happy with how Weston's operating, and if so, I guess we'll pat ourselves on the back. But I think it's just people that don't know that they can be part of that process.
Right. Plug yourself in, get to know what's happening, and come out to those open houses on projects so you can kind of get to know what is coming up and give your opinion about how you would see that project in the future. Like you said, with the Vista Park Recreation Complex open house, but there's also other open houses on projects that will be coming up in the future for infrastructure and public works and different things like that. So we encourage our residents to take a look at the calendar online, subscribe to Newsday Tuesday. That's where you'll get all of the information about all of these type of activities coming up, and get involved. And if you can't attend, just go ahead and email us, and we'll take your information into consideration.
Exactly. I think the same thing is true, and I'm not trying to say come to the City of Weston. People complain about their HOAs all the time. Not too many people show up at HOA meetings. People complain about our schools. Not too many people are going to PTA meetings. I mean, the only way to really get involved is to get involved.
Right. Be the change you want to see in the world. Right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a lot of the tension that exists can be related to how a city effectively manages their growth and builds out over the course of, let's say, 10 years. So from your perspective, the city manager, what are the next 10 years of the City of Weston going to look like, or what are we planning for?
Sure. Well, we know a couple of obvious things. Bonaventure Resort was torn down several years back, and something's going to go there. We don't know what today, but we're going to have to be thoughtful and mindful about what that is and what the community expectations are for that property. We know Cleveland Clinic is going to grow. They've got land available to grow, and we're going to have to manage that growth because Weston Road is already a pretty busy thoroughfare and is only going to get busier if Weston Road grows. And we know redevelopment is going to have to happen, and that word, I think, is somewhat inflammatory to some people, but it doesn't need to be. I mean, we all live in homes, most of us do, that if we didn't do anything to our house over 20 or 30 years, it would not be a desirable place to live.
Right.
The kitchen, depending on your needs, is going to change once or twice. It's going to be rebuilt. You're going to add a pool. You're going to need to replace the air conditioner. Well, the city needs to do the same thing, right? The city facilities and also the facilities in the city. Bonaventure is an older part of the community. At some point, that area will be redeveloped, or portions of the area. And the same thing can be said for just about any of the non-residential areas in the community. And even the residential areas, for that matter. Some of our neighborhoods are redoing their community centers or their parks. So that is something that's going to have to happen, and we're going to have to do it in a way that is thoughtful, respecting what Weston was in the beginning what brought us all here to begin with, but also acknowledging that it just can't be the same forever. It has to evolve. It has to change. And if it doesn't, it won't be a desirable place to live 10, 20, 30 years from now.
So we've talked a lot about city operations and your role as the city manager, Don. But as we come to a close on today's episode, we'd like to know, as we've titled this podcast, The Weston Way, what does the Weston Way mean to you?
For me, because I did work in government, traditional government for a little while, it means providing government differently. It means breaking the stereotypes of what people think of government. And this is really important for those who have come to Weston from other countries that have left government that was not operating well, or
Right.
in some cases was even oppressive. How can we break the models of bureaucracy and red tape and lazy government employees? And I think we've done very well over the years to break those models, to provide the same services everybody else does, but in a more efficient way, in a more effective way, in a more creative way, and in a way that has provided a lot of value to the residents. If you bought a home here 30 years ago and you're still in that same home today, I guarantee you that home has increased in value many, many times over.
Right.
And that's because we have maintained Weston at such a high standard that even during the recession, our values didn't drop. They dropped the least of any community in America. And I think that's partly because of our schools, partly because of our great faith-based organizations, our great neighborhoods, but also partly because the city of Weston held our standard through that time.
Right.
I know we're running short on time here, and you probably have a dozen missed calls and emails to attend to since we've been here recording, but I just wanted to give you sort of one last message that you would want the community to leave with.
There are two great quotes that come to mind when I think about Weston. The first is a quote by Disney. Obviously, I worked there, and Walt Disney is one of my heroes, I guess. He said, "You can dream, create, design, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it requires people to make the dream a reality." Weston is a beautiful place, but if not for the people, it would just be a beautiful place, right? We're a great community, I think, because of the people. And that is the city staff, the designated staff, and of course the residents, the business owners. I really thank all the people of Weston for making Weston what it is. Beautiful trees, Thad's doing a great job in landscaping,
Yes.
but beautiful trees don't make a community. The other quote I think is one of my favorites as well, is from Aaron Sorkin. I was a big fan of The West Wing, and he had a quote in one of the early episodes that said, "Decisions are made by those who show up." If you want to be part of the future of Weston, you need to actively be part of the future of Weston. And you can sit on the sidelines and criticize all you want, but unless you come to meetings, unless you go to workshops, unless you're part of the process, I'm not going to be so crass as to say, well, then just deal with it. But the reality is you weren't part of the solution then if you just sat and waited. So please, we invite you. I'm telling you right now, come be part of the process. I can't say that everybody's going to get wins, but I can say we're all going to make this better if we're all part of the future of Weston.
Thank you so much, Don. We appreciate your words today, and we hope our residents have a glimpse of the inside of operations of our beautiful city of Weston. We know that everyone loves Weston and wants to learn about our city, so we appreciate that and appreciate the opportunity to have you and all of our guests on to explore Weston in a deeper level.
Well, it's been great, and I look forward to hearing future episodes for sure.
Get ready for the city's favorite holiday tradition, the annual Hometown 4th of July Celebration Parade. This year's theme is Red, White, Blue, and Weston Proud. 2025 Grand Marshal Steve Goldstein, announcer for the Florida Panthers, and the Weston City Commission will lead the way for local performing groups, dazzling fire trucks, police vehicles, community groups, and more, all decked out in their patriotic best. The parade steps off at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, July 4th at the corner of Town Center Boulevard and 3 Village Road, winding through Weston Town Center to the heart of Main Street. Bring your family and friends, wave those flags high, and share your patriotic pride with us. For more information, visit westonfl.org/events. Austin, it's always a great day when we can have the city manager here in the studio and just have a conversation.
Yeah, he has so much knowledge and experience here in the city of Weston. And I think anybody that's met him before, you can tell right away he's a really effective communicator and a really good voice for the city and the operation of our
And he's
park.
so approachable.
He's so approachable. I know if he's, at any of these city events or if you see him out in the community, he always enjoys talking to residents. If you have your questions, definitely he's a great source for the city.
And Austin, tell us about the upcoming event that we have.
Yeah. As we touched on in the interview, hurricane season, it's just around the corner. If you haven't began your preparations, now's the time. Our friends and partners at BSO Weston, Fire Rescue and EMS, they're putting together a hurricane preparedness event that's coming up on Tuesday, May 27th. It's just an hour long. It's from 7:30 to 8:30. This is perfect for families, for homeowners, for business owners here in the city of Weston to come out to kind of learn how you can best prepare yourself for hurricane season to protect your home, protect your family, your belongings, your pets. It's a great source of information. We definitely encourage you to register if you can, although walk-ins are welcome. But if you do register in advance, you're eligible to receive a free emergency preparedness kit from the BSO Weston team. So it's definitely a great event.
It's a great way to start off your preparedness plans for the hurricane season. So I know we are going to have an episode all about hurricane preparedness, but don't wait for us to have that. Get started on your preparedness plans now. You can find the Weston Way anywhere you stream your favorite podcasts. So be sure to listen and subscribe. And we invite you all to submit questions for future topics. So send us your topic ideas or questions that you want answered by visiting westonfl.org/podcast, and you'll be able to submit those directly to us.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.